First off, I was looking in and I saw you're a Geelong supporter, so I'm just wondering how you're feeling about the game the other week.
Yeah, it was obviously quite disappointing to start off with. And the good thing was at halftime, I knew that I was going for Melbourne in the grand final. My family's split Melbourne Geelong, so
Yeah, well,
um, for me it was when I said my dad's Melbourne. So it's a pretty big thing for the family to still have Melbourne in there, but always disappointed when you lose in that sort of fashion. But I'd much prefer to follow a club that keeps putting their name up there rather than a club that bottoms out and comes back again. And I think we've had an amazing, since 2005, we've been in the finals effectively, except 1 year.
yeah, well, that would be, it's a fair point. Much rather like not have to watch your team suffer for 10 years and then get one premiership.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so uh, so sort of going into your background a little bit. Growing up, were there any like major influences that made you want to work in like either politics, or I saw you were a police officer for a period of time? Were there any
Most
like
of my influence was
things that
actually
influenced
around
that?
police. Yeah, I didn't really have a interest in politics at all. So I had posters on my wall as a kid to be a copper. I went and applied when I was 18. Unfortunately, I lost my license at that time because I was an idiot driving too fast at the age of 18 and got caught. So that didn't help, but it also realigned what I was doing at the time. So I went and did other things before going into the police force. But yeah, police was one of my goals because you can genuinely, felt you could really give back. And it was where I suppose my qualifications were because I left school pretty early.
Okay. Um, well, yeah, going into the next one, I saw that you did leave high school early. Um, was that something that you wish you stayed doing high school, or?
No, I suppose I don't have regrets. I have lessons I've learned along the way. And one of the things I'd say, I never regret leaving school early because I got a lot of work experience in. It's a different world. I know things change in generations, but year 10 was a bit more common to leave then. But I've gone back to university and I'm really glad I'm at university as a mature age student in the things I've done. I'm still studying, so I haven't stopped. I've did a diploma, a graduate diploma in adolescent health and welfare, which was at Melbourne Uni. I went on and did a graduate certificate in business administration, and now I'm doing a master's in business.
That's awesome. Um, was it harder to get into politics with no university like backing?
Yeah, not really. I'd done the university and graduate diploma by then, so that
Okay.
probably assisted a bit. In saying that, I don't think it really makes a lot of difference if you've got skills outside. I think one of the things Parliament misses, and all politics, so any political party, the one thing they miss is enough experience from, and I'm going to say the real world. You come into politics and you get stuck in a little bubble, and I think it's both parties miss the fact we've got people coming in from all ranges of backgrounds. Now, obviously, our party does have a lot more, but we're still starting to see a development where we're getting some people who have only ever worked in politics or within government departments. Very difficult, very different frame of mind when you're considering money that's yours versus money that's not on how you're going to spend it. And I think that's really important. We have people with experiences like myself working in small businesses, working in the police is obviously still government, but I've had a range of government and non-government jobs.
Okay. Um, well, expanding on the small business, you did say you were a small. I saw somewhere that you were a small business owner for a period of time. What were you like? What type of small business were you running? I'm curious.
Yeah, I had a franchise. So I had a Baker's Delight in Wheelers Hill. So I bought that in 2007, and it was at this stage, it was struggling considerably, so it may not have survived.
Yeah.
We got in and built that business up fairly strongly, and we employed more staff and changed the hours, and we changed a lot of the way we did it. But one of the big things that I firmly believe in is it's the change isn't just in marketing and what have you, it's also changing your staff culture. And we were very, very strict on our staff culture. So we believed, we rewarded people. We kept the same staff who everyone told me to get rid of. But we kept the same staff, and then we gave them responsibilities. We brought them along for the ride. We rewarded them when the store did well. And not just financially, it was also about letting them be part of the decision making of where we went. And our business just, as I said, we went up, I would say nearly doubled.
Yeah. Wow.
And then when we sold, the people who took over from there probably removed a bit of that culture. And I think the impact was there because eventually the store went bankrupt. And then there's new owners there now who are hopefully building that culture back again.
Hopefully. Um, Going into the police force because you did that pretty early on. Was that was something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything better. When I was a kid, I used to dream about it. My uncle was a copper. My auntie was a copper. So I had a family background. My grandfather was involved in military police. So we had a policing background. And just meeting the people along the way that we'd met. I actually lived with a copper when I moved out of home at 17. So I lived with a copper for a little while as well. And I just loved what they could do and give back and how you could do it. So I really enjoyed the opportunity to do that. And when I got in, there is so many opportunities. Like being a copper is not just in a blue uniform walking down the street.
Yeah.
The first couple of weeks of walking down the street past mirrored windows to see how good you look in the uniform. But after that, you generally get opportunities to give back. And that means, I worked in liquor licensing. I worked with young people, victims of crime. I worked with youth with mental health issues. It's just an amazing experience.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I lost myself in the questions.
That's all right.
So going into your parliament, like getting into parliament a little bit, or politics, I should say. I don't either way. What was it specifically that made you realise you wanted to get into politics?
When I was in my business, I left the police force and went into my own business. And some of the reasons I left the police force at the time was some of the directional things I understood. I believed the direction the police was going in. I really wanted to have a focus on working with young people. So I was a coach in junior footy. I did a lot of other things outside of work. And I think we needed to have that change. So I started off by one day going to write a letter to the Herald Sun to sort of say, government's bad. And then I thought to myself, well, that's not going to do anything. So why don't I try and achieve something? And I spoke to a mate of mine, Viv Highland, who, the late Viv Highland, he passed away not long ago. So he eventually convinced me to be a good idea to get involved in the party. And the process went from there. So I got involved in the party, started meeting people, realised that you can make a difference, you can make a change if you wanted, or you could just sit and whinge. So I had a go. And in 2009, I ran for pre-selection for the party. And then in won the pre-selection, obviously. In 2010 was elected to Victorian Parliament for the seat of Gembrook. I've had 3 terms now, coming up into the 3rd, but we're changing seats again. So my seat's about to be abolished. I'll be running for the new seat of Berwick.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So you mentioned there that you you went towards the Liberal Party because of your friend, you said?
Well, no, I leant towards the Liberal Party really. So if you go back over history, I leant towards the Liberal Party because my values have always been, okay. I'm a firm believer in the freedom of the individual, the freedom of yourself. And I actually believe that we will get more back by trusting and working with individuals. I'm not the hugest fan of all the of group mentality or, what's good for one's good for everyone. I think we should have my definition of equal opportunity is everyone has the same opportunity. And if you decide to be a lazy ass, sit in the corner and do nothing, then you shouldn't be rewarded for that. So I just think we need to create it so there is a bit of competition, but I think people should be rewarded if they want to put the extra effort in. And I think that becomes frustrating in some occupations when, everyone will see it. You've got someone sitting next to you doing nothing and you're working as hard as you can and you both get exactly the same paycheck. Well, eventually, if you're going on the scenario that you'll never get rewarded, then everyone will eventually end up to the lowest common denominator. So I'm a firm believer in give people belief, give them support. If they want to have a real crack, and sometimes they'll, I won't say they'll fail. Sometimes they'll learn lessons that meant they failed. As long as they learn lessons from it, give them a go and back them in again.
Awesome. Do you feel like having a small business allows you to relate a lot more when you're, when you're campaigning or doing just in everyday sort of political things?
Yeah, small business, yes. Probably understanding of the economy probably a bit more and understanding the pressures and impacts on small businesses, particularly at the moment with what's going on in COVID and small businesses locked down. When I engage with them, and you can talk about, and I've had 2 businesses, so one failed. I had an online business that we lost a lot of money on. Okay. And that was I learned more from that than I've learned from the business that I made money. Yeah. And I think that's a real big positive for me. But I think I probably learned more in communication from Victoria Police because, one day you'll be talking to the richest person in Toorak and the next day you're speaking to the bloke that stole the painting from the richest person in Toorak. And I think you've got to have a different way deal with people. But I think from a business perspective, from both businesses I had a house that was 3/4 of the way through construction when a builder went broke, and I worked for the builder, so I lost my job.
Yeah, wow.
Those impacts, those lessons have created more of what I am than the positives along the way, because you've got to take the time to step back, go, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Don't make any rash decisions. And now what can I do to improve or learn from that so I don't end up in that position again?
Okay, awesome. Coming into Parliament in 2010 when you got elected, what was your first year like?
Scary. I remember walking up the stairs of the Parliament and just thinking to myself, this place is huge. And believe it or not, as a member of Parliament, I don't even walked inside the Victorian Parliament once in my life before that date. And that's what I mean, having the life experience rather than just parliamentary experience. I actually really enjoyed that first 12 months of literally sitting in the chamber, learning what was going on, understanding the processes and procedures, because I didn't understand them. And I'm outside, so it'd be like them walking into the Parliament now, and you wouldn't know what you can and can't say. So I had to watch that at first. And then every so often I'd make a mistake, or they'd say that's unparliamentary language. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm from out in Berwick. I don't care if it's unparliamentary. I'm just telling you, this business is struggling and it's really annoying me. So you just had to learn some of those processes. But at the same time, I don't want to educate out of myself who I am, because that's why I went in. And my wife's very good. If I get to that stage, and I should say my staff are pretty good with that too. If I get to that stage, then I want them to say, you know what, maybe it's not time for you to be here anymore.
Yeah, well, okay, that's awesome. So sort of talking about a little bit what it's like sort of more working in the recent years, what are some major changes that's happened with your work due to COVID?
Number one is the biggest impact is the lack of community interaction. So we love going to the sports clubs, the community groups, the business groups, walking around businesses. That's where you hear what's going on the ground, and that's all but dried up and gone. So that's a major impact. The other one is the use of digital technology, such as what we're doing now with Zoom, and also emails. Like, emails is, it doesn't sound long ago, but 10 years, it's quite a long time in the development of people now realize they can email you, and they expect instant replies. And actually, it's funny, just this week, I watched a interview with Brian Cook, which one of my staff passed on to me. And it actually spoke about emails and responding or doing something with him within a 24-hour period. And if you maintain that, that's a really good skill to have and a really good outcome to have for the community. So it's just the change in how we communicate. But COVID has totally changed that. But in saying that, we're all desperate to get back to those meetings again. I learn more at the local footy than I do sitting in my office by speaking to some of the tradies there who will tell you what's going on and not, and they tell you fairly truthfully on the second beer. So it's really good to go out to those places. And people say to me, "Oh, sorry to disturb you, you're not at work." And I'm like, well, no, I am at work. I'm here to listen to you. If I don't want to listen to you, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you to ring me Monday. But most times it's like, well, let's talk about it. What is the issue? 80% of whilst you're standing, you bring back to the office and fix.
Wow. So as someone who is a small business owner, I'm sure it's like a little bit painful to see what's happening with small businesses going through COVID. I'm wondering, like, what is some of the plans that you have to support small businesses coming out of COVID?
Yeah, first of all, it's devastating what's happening with small businesses. It's heartbreaking. I got frustrated, and I've had a few people have a go at me at different times when I go out there and say we should open up a bit more or give a few more freedoms, and people go, you're supporting this, and you're supporting. Well, you know what? I'm actually supporting the fact that some of these businesses just will not survive. It's very easy for me. I'm one of them who's sitting in an office getting my full wage to sit there and judge what's happening in the rest of the world, because I'm kind of in that ivory castle where everything's fine. So when I go out and deal with them and see the pain they're in, the only way that we can fix it is to make sure that I encourage people to get vaccinated. So first of all, I really want people to get vaccinated, but we've got to actually have a commitment. When we get to that 80%, we're going to be having the freedoms. Give people hope that they're going to be able to open their stores, their shops, their cafes, restaurants, and all that in some kind of COVID safe way. Don't give us numbers of 10 people in a pub. That is just ridiculous. Give us where we can have one per X amount of square meters so they can actually open and create an income. In my area, the Cardi and the Central, I obviously have visited it on many occasions in my life. It's killing the owners, not just financially. They know the impact on their staff. Like, their staff are sitting at home. That's just one organisation. That's through the whole thing. These small business owners, all they want is to be able to open and operate safely. They get if there's little regional lockdowns, but they don't get this full state lockdown for 240 days, whatever it is now.
It's pretty devastating. What were some of your bigger frustrations in how COVID was handled in Victoria?
Probably goes directly back to that. We kept locking down everything as soon as we can, and I'm a big fan of what's happening in New South Wales with their Premier. She's got the courage to put the hope out there. Yes, their cases are up, but we have to get to a stage we've got to learn to live with the outcomes of what COVID's going to be. Probably the other biggest frustration, or it sort of goes into one, is the government won't release the actual medical advice, so people can't have faith and trust in what they're doing. But then they come out with these projections. So one of the projections, if we open up at 80% and go back to normal, we're going to have 4,000 odd cases a day and whatever it was, 2,000 deaths a week. Well, I'd love to know where that data comes from, because over in the UK, they're at 70%, they're fully open, and they're only getting 100 deaths in a week. So why is ours going to be so much worse than everywhere else in the world that are opening up again? I just think we have to be very cautious on that and turn around and go, that data, whilst important, you've got to look at what's actually happening around the world, and look at the other impacts with, mental health, education. There's a whole range of kids from Prep and 1 who have missed the most important formative years, and year 11 and 12, and I'm biased, I've got a year 12 daughter, 11 and 12, who have missed all the social side of their life at that particular stage. And obviously, a lot of people you're talking to are in university. It's the parties, the O week, I don't know, going to university and skipping a class and going to the pub is as important as going to the university and learning, because if you're happy in your education, you're going to learn more. It's like your workplace. And I just think we've lost a lot of that.
Okay. Now I'm getting off COVID because, no one likes to talk about it for too long.
Yeah.
Is politics an area you see yourself in to retire, or do you have any other sort of like places that you think you might end up?
Do I see it as I will continue in it as long as two things. Number one, that I'm enjoying it, I think I can give back. And number two, the community wants me, because they can get rid of me as fast as they take me in, which we know that. So I've got to be very aware of that. I always plan for the worst. So I plan to have, how do I better myself for if I do get the opportunity to be a minister, but also can take that out with me if I left. But if I don't see myself in this time 65, that's still 20 years away from where I am now. I do see myself, if I had a dream, going into something in sports and community. So not quite sure what it is yet, but I'd love to be working where you're in a sports organisation where you can actually give back, working with particularly communities through Dandenong and what have you. And I speak to Melbourne Victory, who run amazing programs dealing with young kids. And I just think if you can make a change in their life, then that's probably where I'm going to say the fulfillment of my career would be. I don't want to be a CEO of a company sitting behind a desk. I want to be out there on the ground and doing stuff with people again.
Awesome. I did see that you have visited India in the past. I believe that's what it said. I'm just wondering, was there anything that shocked you or changed the way you view things back in Australia, maybe?
Everything. When we landed, it was the biggest culture. There's a different definition of the culture shock in there. You just arrive. And at first, I remember the first 24 hours, I was with Nick Wakeling, a colleague of mine, and it was heartbreaking. Like, you walked around the street the first night and you have footpaths that are 2.5, 3 metres wide. And it's not one or two homeless people. It's the streets covered with people sleeping on it. The sanitary through some of the areas is quite heartbreaking just because they haven't got it. The rubbish, there's a whole lot of things of those sort of things you'd say in these developing nations. They've got huge, huge challenges. They have obviously a lot of coal, etc. as well. So there's a whole range of things in there that just were heartbreaking when you walked through it. But after 24 hours, I sort of did that thing with also making decisions, took the step back and said, okay, I can't give homes to the 800,000 million people, whatever it is there, that haven't got a home. But then I had to look at it, and the kids I was meeting and the people I was meeting on the street, and they weren't running around unhappy. Like, the kids were smiling. They were smiling with a crappy soccer ball, whereas, you know, we have kids back here that whinge because they haven't got the newest iPhone 13. So it did put things into perspective. Now, in saying that, that's not anything against our generation here. People go, oh, that's a negative. Our kids want everything. Yeah, they do. That's nothing wrong with being ambitious. Those kids there see a new soccer ball as a really big thing, and ours see an iPhone 13 as a big thing. But it was quite amazing just to walk around and speak to those kids and realise they're just genuinely happy. Like, there was a lot, not all, there's still issues there. And once you got that, and you could start to walk into some of these communities, and I walked through some of the areas we refer to as slums, they were referred to as, you know, working areas. Quite amazing, you know. It's just that opens your eyes. But I was so glad I did it, and a lot of people would avoid that section. I was so pleased that I went and walked through some of those areas and met some of the families who genuinely just want to love life, because life is a gift to them, and they just treasure it for every step of the way.
Awesome. Any travel plans in the future? Any other countries you want to see?
At the moment, I'll be really happy if I can go to Audi 10 kilometres away. But look, if there's anyone else, I'd love to go back to India and see different parts of it, because when you go, I've done 3 states. If you do states there, every state is different. The food's different. The culture's different. Love to go to Sri Lanka. I think they're probably 2, if I was saying, are on my list of where I would really love to go. And I would love to, I love America. So I've been to America, and I love American sports.
Yeah.
So if I had my ultimate sports trip, it's craft breweries and sports clubs, the sports facilities and sports games throughout America. I'd love to do from one side or the other and see as much as I can. I won't say drink as much as I can, but I'd definitely enjoy some craft beers.
Yeah, it doesn't sound bad at all. Now, final question. What is the one thing you want to do when Victoria opens back up? Like, the first thing you want to do?
First thing I want to do,
yep.
I bought 20 pints on the thing called Love Your Local,
yep.
which is it was a support for local pubs, so you could go on and buy pints now and get them later, if that made sense. So to give them some cash flow now. I want to go to the Lawn Hotel with a few mates and families and what have you, and sit down there and share our 20 pints. We've got a few more with the others there, and enjoy a wonderful day outside and making sure hospitality is back on track. And I'm sure we'll well and truly enjoy our Carlton Draft fresh brewed beer, whatever they call it now, and just have a great day out. That's probably my goal.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you very much for doing this.
No dramas, Lachlan, and I really appreciate it.